Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second React recording. I'm joined this evening by Vlad, who's going to be doing some team teaching with me. I'm also joined by Kadar and Emily. Thank you for joining, helping us to make this recording. We're going to start off today by doing a recap of what we were looking at last time with React. And then we're going to introduce some new topics like state and event handlers in subsequent sections. So first thing I'm going to do is talk about what we covered last time and recap it a little bit more. We talked about React components, and let's just dig deeper into what they are and recap for yourselves and for the whole class. So I've got a function like this called application, and it's returning something here. If I just close this down a little bit more, you see that it's returning this, what looks like a div element here. Just to be absolutely clear, when we're kind of creating React components like this, these functions are returning React elements. And eventually what's going to happen is React is going to take these React elements and turn them into what is on the DOM, okay? Or it's going to render something on the DOM. So what we're doing in this function, if you like, is returning some React elements and saying to React, this is what we want the DOM to look like, okay? So at the moment, if we look at this function, what it does is it returns a div element. So that's like us saying, React, please render a div element in the DOM, okay? If I open it up a bit more, I'm going to see some stuff nested inside. So we've got a H4 heading inside of this, a H4 heading element, and that's again saying we're saying to React, please render a H4 element in the user interface, okay? And so on and so forth. We've got another H4 heading here. React, please render a H4 in the DOM, and also another div element. And if we go inside of here, this is the part that's going to look a little bit strange because we're using this hybrid syntax now where we're combining HTML and JavaScript syntax. What we have is open curly brace, close curly brace, and then we're doing this JavaScript expression where we're mapping what looks like a map inside this div element. And if we open up and inspect what that is doing, this map is mapping over some kind of array, top-rated games, and what it's doing is it's returning each time another React element with some stuff nested inside of it. So the power of React, or one of the powers of React, is this ability to embed JavaScript expressions like this inside of React elements. And that will allow us to compose React components and such, so on and so forth. And we can do the same thing over here and look inside. And inside of this div element, I've got these tabs. So the other thing to recap from last time is that if we see an opening tag and then the name of another React component, this is effectively us calling, it's not quite the same, but it's effectively us calling the React component and saying whatever is inside of that React component, whatever is inside that function, we want to return that to be part of the user interface, okay? So what this kind of recap wants to get across, what I should say is what I want to get across in this recap is that fundamentally, when we're creating these React components, we're kind of describing the user interface using React elements like this. This is a React element. And then what's going to happen is React is going to render, and that process of rendering is taking the React elements that we've written in our component and then putting them into the user interface, into the DOM, okay? So, questions, thoughts? Does anybody want me to clarify anything or focus on something else in that explanation? Feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch, for the explanation. I'm not aware that you used, which is hybrid syntax.
Hybrid syntax. Cool.
What does that mean?
I can't type. Hybrid means like a combination of two things, right? So if you have a hybrid of something, it might be a combination of, say, if you had a boat and a car, and you had a hybrid of the two, you might have some kind of vehicle that could drive and go on water. So it's not a very good example, but a hybrid is a combination of two things. So hybrid syntax in this context means you've got a combination of JS and HTML style syntax. So that's what it means in this particular context.
Okay.
I thought you were going to use the example of a hybrid car. So like
thinking very quickly, hybrid, boat and a car. Imagine that.
I mean, it still works, but
Works, but it's not a very good one. No.
there was actually the banana boat in Liverpool for a while. That was basically a boat and a car.
There you go. The banana boat is a perfect example of a hybrid.
Can we just see all the code like fully, if that makes sense, rather
You want
than
to see the whole function open up?
if that's
Yeah.
okay, please, just so I
Of
can
course,
see it.
yeah. Can't remember the opposite of command K naught. Do you know that, Vlad? That opens up everything. I can't remember what the shortcut is. It's just
No.
I don't know.
One more
Yeah, it
question,
looks like this clarity.
Mitch.
Say it again.
Just one more question, please.
Go for it. Go for it.
The return, sometimes there's brackets and I mean parentheses, and now there's no parentheses here. Is that working same thing or different thing?
So, for example, here you mean?
And you know when you go the top of the function after the return.
Sometimes there are parentheses like this.
Yeah, and then you put the whole thing in there. Would that make difference if you don't use it?
No, I think it's doing exactly the same thing in this particular scenario. They're interchangeable, so you can remove those. It'll work exactly the same way.
The other thing I'm going to ask as well is so far we've been taught that, well, I say we've been taught, but like from what I know is that each element we'd put in a separate folder. So like, for example, the header would go in a different folder and then I'd just export that to the app.js. Is
That's
this
right.
where you can have it all in one, or is this just as an example?
So to clarify, here we're using header here. So we're actually putting header into the React component, but we're not actually declaring the header component in here. So that's the difference. So the bit where you would see function header, yeah, and whatever that returns, that would live in a separate file.
Yeah, but my question is, sorry, is it better practice to put it in a separate file or?
Yes, definitely. It's better practice to separate it out and organize it into separate files for sure. Otherwise, if you have like a really complicated application, you're going to end up with an app, and then you're going to have like tons of functions scattered throughout that file, and it's best to organize them into separate files.
I only asked because when you opened it all up, I was like, whoa, that looks like obviously complicated, but actually looking at it, it's just obviously all the separate functions, but in one huge.
They're all being used exactly. So maybe we could also maybe like put that into its own component as well, potentially this as well, and then it would become even more kind of organized and then succinct. But yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, I've got a question. Can you show us what this set of components describes?
Yes, of course. I'll actually show you the key thing. So the app here, and what it returns, this description of the user interface is actually going to be something very similar to what we're seeing in Google Play. So in Google Play, you've got like this kind of landing page where you can see top charts, offline games, and then a bunch of cards here describing each of the games that you've got. So this is what the user interface looks like. And it's always super important to bear in mind and to remember. Exactly. So whatever we create in here, whatever this function returns is a description of what we want the user interface to look like. So in here, we've got heading with top paid, top rated games, and then we map through and then we kind of generate a game card for every single top rated game. And that's the kind of thing that we could be doing here. We've got like a heading here, and then we can map through and then just create a bunch of these game cards in the user interface. And likewise down here for each section. So the React component is describing the user interface. So you'll always see a correspondence between whatever is being returned in this function on whatever the UI looks like. And that's an important takeaway. Cool.
Cool.
Awesome. Should we pause there?